Welcome to Partnerships for Profit, the podcast where we bring you inside the world of joint ventures, strategic partnerships, and powerful collaborations. Each episode, you'll dive into conversations with top entrepreneurs, visionaries, and business leaders, unlocking the secrets to building profitable relationships that drive growth and success. Whether you're looking to expand your network, find new referral partners, or scale your business, you're in the right place. Let's get started.
Hi, welcome to Partnerships for Profit. I'm your host today, Felicity Lartigue. I'm joined here today with Melaney LaGrone. She is an award-winning crimmigration expert. She's a court TV legal analyst and the host of Beyond the Border. She's also the managing attorney and CEO of LaGrone Law. From the streets of Detroit to the courtrooms of Georgia and the U.S. Virgin Islands, Melaney shares how she turned her calling into a national movement. This episode is going to deep dive into law, leadership, immigration, and how high-achieving women can reclaim balance, joy, and freedom outside of the workplace. Thanks so much for joining us this morning, Melaney.
Thanks for having me, Felicity.
Of course. So we'll go ahead and just dive right in. I'd love to talk a little bit in the beginning about your time as a Detroit police officer and how that prepared you for becoming a crimmigration lawyer.
Okay. And that was so long ago. I'm probably going to age myself.
That's okay.
So I joined the Detroit Police Department right out of college. So way back in the 90s. And I originally, because my degree was in criminal justice anyways, so I originally wanted to go to the federal government, the U.S. Marshals, but at the time they had a hiring freeze on. And of course I had to pay my bills. So I had met a lot of Detroit police officers because I went to University of Detroit, so right in the heart of the city. And they said, we're hiring, so come on. So I ended up, applying, and going to the academy. And then I became a Detroit police officer. So I was there for almost 10 years. I did 5-6 years at Gang Squad, which was the special enforcement unit. And then I did the rest of my time at narcotics. It was an awesome experience. I learned so much. It was a good experience. Like, I can't say that there was anything that was bad or anything like that, but it did help me grow up kind of fast and kind of, stop being a little bit naive, I guess, about what happens in the legal system. And then, and so ultimately that's what made me want to go to law school so that I could represent and defend, the Black and brown men that I was, putting in jail.
Definitely. What do you think your most eye-opening moment was when you were working as a Fulton County prosecutor?
So I started actually as a criminal defense attorney in Michigan. Okay. And then when I moved to Georgia a few years later, right after I got barred in Georgia, I became a Fulton County prosecutor because it was a new state. And I wasn't quite familiar with, how things went and, their rules and things like that. So I kind of really wanted to go into Fulton County and learn from the best because that is a county that is most active. They have a lot of cases. They have a lot of different specialty units and things like that. So I joined the Fulton County Prosecutor's Office. I was in the non-complex unit for about a year and a half. And in non-complex, we used to call it the rocket docket. So in other words, they would get cases in and out, 90 to 100 cases a month, churn them in and out, in and out. So it taught me a lot. It taught me a lot about Georgia law. It also, I was able to really learn from some of the best prosecutors, pretty much in the world. And so it allowed me to really gain that expertise and that knowledge of, representing, because at the time, obviously, if I'm a prosecutor, I'm representing, victims and things like that. So representing victims, figuring out how the system worked. And then ultimately, I could take that knowledge and go back out on my own and become a criminal defense attorney again, but now in Georgia.
Wow. What inspired you to open LaGrone Law and take control of your legal destiny?
Because I didn't want to work for nobody. I mean, that's the cut and dry answer.
Yeah.
Becoming a lawyer was a second career for me. And so exactly that. I didn't want to work for anybody. I wanted to be able to, have my time, my freedom. I wanted to take the type of cases that I wanted. I wanted to represent people the way that I wanted to represent them. And I just, all in all, wanted to make an impact on the world and do it my way.
Sure. And I mean, I feel like at this time in our political climate, that's a really important thing to follow and pursue. I feel like that's very important work right now, especially. Why did you choose to open up a second office in the U.S. Virgin Islands? What has that kind of done for your business? And
so ultimately, when I first opened LaGrone Law in Georgia, it was a criminal defense firm. And then we started to take on some immigration clients. We might have, like some immigration clients that were, maybe our criminal clients, things like that. And then I started doing more of family-based immigration, marriage-based petitions, fiance visas, the happier type of cases. And I love sun, I love water. I felt like I probably, should have been born on an island somewhere. But ironically, just randomly, someone from the U.S. Virgin Islands who was an attorney had reached out to a lot of us attorneys here in the States and said, hey, who wants to, come work in the Virgin Islands? We need some really good attorneys. There's a lot, because down there was a lot of attorneys that were kind of older, ready to retire, and they needed some young blood. So I was like, me?
Yeah.
It's just me and my dog, Max. So I ended up going to the St. Thomas in 2019. And I spent the last 5 years on and off in St. Thomas. And I found that they were really in need of immigration services. Reason being is because down there they have, twofold. So one is they have a lot of what's called immigration consultants, and those aren't attorneys. Those are basically just form filler people who will say, hey, I'll help you with your immigration forms. Let me do it. And, not, saying anything against them, but at the end of the day, they're not attorneys, and they don't really have an ethical duty to make sure that things are done correctly. So a lot of cases were getting messed up, and there were a lot of clients that, people that were, put into removal proceedings because of it, or didn't have an option to legally stay because of the way that the case was handled. And I found that they needed a great immigration attorney down there to help. It's an island. It's a U.S. territory, so they don't have, a lot of, really, really good services. And the attorneys that are down there, although they have their specialties, but because it's so small, it's 3 islands, St. Thomas, St. John, and St. Croix, in order for you to make enough money, to live and keep a firm going and things like that, you kind of have to do a gamut of a gamut of law, period. And so with immigration is so detailed, so intricate, that is kind of one of those type of legal fields where you can't say, I do real estate, I do business transactions, and I do immigration law.
Right.
It kind of really doesn't work like that. And, so not, taking away from the great attorneys that are down there, but they have to do everything in order, to have so many cases coming in that, they're kind of taking immigration, but not really having it as a niche and something that they're really, really knowledgeable about. And so when I went down there full force, like, I'm an immigration attorney. That's all that I do. And I'm here to help you.
That's amazing. And it sounds like your work down there was really needed.
Yeah, it was impactful. And I still have cases there. I still travel there, frequently, although I'm back in the States right now. But yeah, it's a great experience. And the island people are so wonderful. I mean, like, they just want, the ones that are coming, because don't forget, it is the U.S. So there's a lot of U.S. people down there, but the ones that are coming from other countries, to the island, they just want to live a good life.
Definitely. It's lucky that you're there now and are able to help them with that.
Thanks.
Let's talk about what exactly crimmigration is and why it's one of the most misunderstood legal fields.
Sure. So, people think when I say that word that I am making a word up. And actually I'm not. It was coined way back when by another attorney. But all it is the intersection of immigration and criminal law. That's where you get crimmigration from. And it's another niche within immigration and a niche within criminal law. Because if you have a client who is a non-US citizen and they have a criminal case, you have to know how to resolve that case so that it doesn't impact their immigration status. And so it could be whether they want to, whether they are undocumented right now, but they have the opportunity to gain legal status in the future. You don't want that criminal case to affect that. Or if they, are a lawful permanent resident, so they have legal status right now here in the United States, but they have a case that might take that status away or, get them deported. You have to know that before you get up there and represent them and they take a plea that's ultimately going to put them in deportation proceedings.
Could we talk about what it's like to be a court TV analyst and how you keep your legal takes sharp under pressure?
Sure. And it's been, oh my gosh, it's been a minute since I've been on court TV. I kind of miss it. It was really, really fun. But I don't know how many cases I did. I think I might have done, 3 or 4 appearances like right in a row. And at the end of the day, it's, you're appearing on TV. So of course, you get nervous. Of course, you fumble your words and things like that, which is okay. You know what I'm saying? Because we don't have to be perfect. But in the end, it's just a discussion. We're having a discussion like you and I are having a discussion right here about a particular case. And usually their cases are very, very fascinating, very interesting. And so it's a fun time to talk about the case. And then they ask me questions, so sometimes they'll ask me questions, well, from the prosecutor side, what do you think? And then they'll flip it and say, from the defense side, what do you think? Because at the end of the day, I have all, I've got the prosecutor side knowledge, the defense side knowledge, as well as, the police officer who is ultimately arresting these people.
Right. If it would be all right for me to go off script for a little bit, I was hoping you might be able to talk a little bit about, in a climate that's changing so rapidly right now, especially in the crimmigration field. If you could pick one challenge that you've been consistently dealing with this new administration, with this new climate, what kind of changes are you seeing in the crimmigration field right now that are affecting you and your practice?
So ultimately, I think it's probably twofold. So in immigration alone, obviously, we are seeing a lot of difficulty, with getting cases maybe approved or getting, we just say even minor stuff like getting a receipt notice from USCIS when we submit cases. And things like that. There's just kind of like a delay. It's almost like they're just like, whatever, you know what I'm saying? We'll get to it when we get to it. And those type of things are really important, especially for us to have a receipt notice to make sure that we know that they received our file and our file is pending. So that's a little difficult right now. Immigration has always been difficult, you know what I'm saying, just in and of itself. But the new climate, obviously, is just making it a little bit more challenging. They are also making things like if we have clients that were previously in removal proceedings and we had situations to where we were able to terminate those proceedings or admin close them is what we call it, so that they can continue processing their paperwork with, USCIS, which is, another jurisdiction, basically, those cases are getting reopened, they're put back in removal proceedings. So we have to go through the whole, process again, to try to get them out, those type of things. As far as in criminal and the crossover, obviously we already know that, non-U.S. citizens that have any sort of criminal cases are being targeted. Anyone that has a conviction, are being targeted for deportation. And they're making it harder in like our criminal courts, like the jails and things like that. So for instance, right now, and before I got on the call today, I had a client's family that's calling because the sheriff's department is pushing them to sign some papers, things like that, telling them that they're not represented by an attorney, and they're clearly represented because we filed our entry of appearance, we have a court hearing date,
Sure.
coming up, things like that. So it's a lot of bullying, and pressuring non-U.S. citizens to do things that they don't want to do.
It sounds like it's kind of integral to the process that they have an attorney that they can really trust, and also trust to represent them in places where they might not even have the knowledge to know that they're being strong-armed or anything like that.
Absolutely. And definitely if you're a non-U.S. citizen and you have a criminal case, you have to get an attorney who is knowledgeable on both, sides, because it's truly going to affect, the outcome of the criminal matter. And then it's going to affect your immigration, status as well.
Definitely. It's a tight time to be in this field.
To say the least.
Yes. Why do you believe that immigration makes for a better nation, and what do you hope that this country can kind of take away from your field the most?
Because at the end of the day, we're a melting pot. And that's something that I get really emotional about, because, who wants to be, all one color and all one culture and, all one type of food and all one type of music, you know what I'm saying? And things like that. Like, immigration is what makes this world the world that we live in. You know what I'm saying? Black, brown, Asian, Hispanic, whoever, all the different, foods, all the different music, everything is just, it's a melting pot of people and stuff, you know what I'm saying? It's like, that's what makes this world, this world, that's what makes America, America. And so I truly believe that is what we have on everything that we send out, is that immigration does make for a better nation.
Do you feel that your passion for immigration law has strengthened during this time as opposed to when you first began?
Oh yeah, I'm on a mission. And that's one thing about, us immigration attorneys, because we are a small group of people who stick together, and we all have one goal in mind, you know what I'm saying? And that is to make sure that our clients get a green card, make sure our clients get citizenship, we're all on a mission. And at the end of the day, if the government continues to, make it so difficult and hard on us and things like that, I've got, where we, the field has immigration attorneys that are powerhouses that are suing the government, they're taking things all the way up to the Supreme Court and everything. So it definitely has changed from, when I started, back in, I don't even know, when I started actually immigration, maybe like in 2014, I think. So it's changed a little bit. But at the end of the day, I was here, we were here, kind of during the first, presidency as well, so this is just kind of, him 2.0,
Right.
above and beyond. So we're ready. We're ready for a fight. That's the thing. If you're an immigration attorney, you are definitely ready for a fight, and we will continue fighting until we get, what we want for our clients.
That's fantastic and absolutely needed right now. So, I appreciate all the work that you do, and I think that your services are really crucial to our society right now.
Thanks.
Of course. I think that we are about ready to wrap up our interview. If there's anything else that you would like to share with us before we head out.
Not really. I know that, you had mentioned about, passion and peace and joy and how, we're doing it, especially as women, as high achieving women. And one of the things that I always say is at the end of the day, we aren't perfect. You know what I'm saying? We don't have to be perfect. We have to understand that we don't have it all together. We don't have to have it all together. And there's just ways, for your own mental health, through, meditation and, and yoga. And, for me, just dance. Sometimes I'll just get up and be in my house just dancing, because nobody's watching me, or I scream at the top of my lungs just so that, I get that energy flowing and I'm ready to fight, another day.
That actually is a great segue into some of your YouTube reels. They're very lighthearted, and I really appreciate how you both share a lot of knowledge about your field with the general public, but also it's a very personal view of you, and I find that you toe a line very well of being relatable, being accessible, and also knowing your stuff and being a great attorney.
Thanks.
Of course. Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's been wonderful talking with you.
It's been a pleasure to be here, and I appreciate and thank you all for having me.
Yes, thank you. And we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Partnerships for Profit. We hope you've gained valuable insights on how to form profitable partnerships and take your business to the next level. Be sure to subscribe and leave us a review wherever you listen to podcasts so you never miss an episode. Got a partnership story to share or someone you'd like to see featured on the show? Reach out to us. Until next time, keep building those partnerships for profit.